Today's video we're going to look at these beautiful chenille embroidery threads and I'm going to show you how to stitch with them. Hi everyone, my name's Sarah, this is my channel, Sarah Homfray Embroidery. If you've been following along you may have seen this beautiful piece of 18th century embroidery here. We've been having a little look at this and having a little delve around to see how it's made, and this uses chenille embroidery thread, this silk thread that I'm going to show you today, and we've been looking at how it's made, so I thought I'll actually show you how you can stitch with this. If you haven't seen this video yet, I'll put a link for it at the end of this one. Do go and check that one out because it's a really beautiful piece. So I'm going to demonstrate with these beautiful threads as I've just mentioned. So these are Steph Francis silk chenille hand dyed threads. They're absolutely gorgeous. I've got a whole range of them there. They're in the shop. So I'm going to show you how to use these ones and just want to show you how to deal with the skein, because chenille thread is very delicate. So we need to be quite careful with it. So this is wrapped in a hank. It goes round and round and round. So I'm going to show you just quickly how to deal with that. So you need to take the label off, but do it carefully so you can keep it because it's got a number on it of the colour. Just going to take the label off and I'll do it in front of this camera. So it's twisted, so just take the twist out of the end there and you can see it like that. Now I've got my thumb, my finger inside that loop. That's quite important, don't let go of that. I'm going to untwist it and it opens out in a big loop like that. It's actually fastened, if I just put that under this camera up here, you can see that at the side. It's actually got a little bit of thread that ties it all together. So what I suggest you do is you need to wrap this around something, an old spool or a cardboard tube or something, to be able to use it, because it will get tangled. So I'm just going to cut through that little bit that's tied on. Now whatever you do, don't take your finger out of that loop, because it'll get in a huge big tangle. So if you've got someone to help you, that's great. They can just hold it in their hands and you can just take the end and wind it off around a spool. Just do it carefully. This is very delicate thread, this, but just make sure you keep your hand inside that and it won't get all knotted. And then you can wrap it around something. I've got some wooden spools here. You can use some old reels if you've got some, or you can make yourself a little one out of some paper. Just roll some paper up and wrap it around there. And just gently keep it like that, and then you can use it straight off the spool. It's worth taking the time to do that, to manage it. If you take it straight from that skein of thread, it will get tangled and you'll get in a big knot with it. You can use short lengths of this, so if that does happen, you can just cut your short lengths a bit shorter and you can keep those in the same way. So that's just a quick bit of information there on how to manage your chenille threads, worth doing before you start stitching with them. Now there's two ways to put this thread down. So we can stitch with it or we can stitch over it. The 18th century piece, they stitched with it, so I'm going to show you that first. It's a little bit trickier, I will admit that. Now when I say short lengths, normally I go fingertip to inside of my elbow, even shorter than that. We are going to do short lengths of this, tiny little short length special needle. So a chenille needle for chenille embroidery. That one's nice and easy. Really long eye, takes the thickness of the thread, point on the end so we can get it through the fabric. This is a large one. This is huge compared to what I'm used to. This is a size 18. We have these in the shop as well, especially for this. And you can thread that in that needle like so. So this is a 2-ply thread in the centre, and I just pull some off the end, because this is what will happen when you stitch with it. You can see the thread in the centre and then it traps the pile of this silk. That's the sort of bit when it comes off. Traps it in between those two threads. So what does happen is it shreds quite easily, so we have to be super careful with this so it doesn't all come apart. If you can't thread the needle, you can do that. Just pull a little bit off the end. You can thread that through the needle, and that's an easier way of getting on. We don't really want it getting it on the needle. We don't really want it to shred, so we're going to be really careful with this. So I'm going to just try stitching with it in the needle as normal. Got a fairly open weave fabric. This is a linen. You may notice I don't have a backing fabric on this. I normally do like a backing fabric, but you're going through twice as much material if you do that, and it will wear the thread and it will disintegrate. So this is one of those times when I recommend that you don't put a fabric behind it and don't use a fabric that's got a really tight weave to it. Just put a little knot in the end there. I'm going to show you how to start and finish it on the next piece, but I just want to do a couple of stitches because this is quite important. So that large needle makes the hole for the chenille to pass through. So as long as your needle is big enough, you can stitch with it. So let's just do some straight running stitches. And you can just see how carefully I'm handling that. If I pull it too hard or I'm too violent with it, is that the word? It will start to disintegrate. So just be nice and gentle, nice and relaxed, nice and calm. You'll be able to feel it if it starts disintegrating. So just a plain running stitch, and that needle will make the hole, the thread goes through the hole. So you can stitch with it, and that's what they did in that 18th century piece. They actually stitched around the flowers. It's very beautiful. So you can do some different stitches. So if I come back and just try and do a back stitch, you can see just gentle with it. I'm going to come up ahead of myself and go back down at the end. Now we've got the chenille sharing holes. We've got twice as much chenille in the same hole. But that's okay. Still just be gentle with it. And you can see it's still going fine. You will get these little fluffy bits come off every now and again. That's okay. So we can do a row of it. And because it's chenille, which is, by the way, French for caterpillar, because it looks like little caterpillars, it does sort of all blend in. It's quite hard to see individual stitches, so you get this beautiful row of it, and it's really lovely. Texture's amazing. Wish you could feel this. It gets a bit harder when you try and overlap stitches, so I'm just going to do another one here. I'm going to do a stem stitch. Now normally with stem stitch we come up in the gap. Now it's starting to wear. Can you see that little bit there? You can see the thread through it, so it's starting to wear. So some stitches are easier than others for this. When you start to sort of overlap and pull through two pieces at the same time, so I'm pulling there and I'm pulling where that needle is coming out, and that's going to wear on that thread. So some stitches are easier than others. I suggest you just get a little bit of fabric and try it out. See which one works and which one doesn't. You can feel it starting to pull a little bit. I'm going to stop that one there. Let's just see if we can get a couple of French knots out of it. You can see where it's wearing around the needle. I have seen people take the chenille off the end and just use the thread in the actual needle, don't have the pile in the needle, but it just bunches up at the end of the needle really. So if you feel like it's wearing, just stop and change the thread. I'm going to do a little French knot and pulling through the middle of that, so that will wear quite a lot. But they do look great, little French knots. I think I'll get one more out of that. You can feel it starting to shred a little bit now, so I wouldn't do any more than that with it, and that was that nice short length. So you can get some different stitches out of it. Just try a little bit, see which ones work, see which ones don't. Nice big needle, nice looser weave on your fabric, and it is okay to stitch with. You just have to be a little bit extra careful with it. So I made myself a bigger sample and tried lots of different stitches with some of the different colours that we've got in the range, and they're really beautiful, and I managed a whole hoop of it. So trying different stitches, so you can see the different ones here. So this is a little satin stitch that goes around and round. That's really nice if you want nice solid area. Got some cross stitches, I've got some chain stitches, just about worked. A little bit harder with that, with the wear on the thread. Just got my running stitch here, some bit of long and short, some eyelets, some French knots, some seeding, a little to the centre, little woven rose. That's quite nice. Leaves work beautiful with it. Bit of buttonhole. So you can do lots of different kinds of stitches with it. It just needs that patience, as I mentioned, just to make sure you don't shred it in nice short lengths. So you can stitch with it. It does work if you stitch with it, but I'm going to show you another method that's a little bit easier than that. So I'm going to show you the next technique on this design here, these beautiful blue flowers. This design is free for you to download and have a go at if you want to, in this technique or any technique you like. It doesn't have to be this one. That is on the free stuff page of the website. I'll put a link in the description below the video for you to go there and download that design. And for my channel members and my patrons, you already had a little glimpse at this, but I am working on this one. It's coming, I promise you. So it's a little design for my channel members and Patreons, a little bit of inspiration. I'm going to talk about how I got that design from this piece of inspiration. So if you're interested in that, that will be up on Patreons and channel members feeds very soon. I'm working on that one, and a little bit of extra for you and a bit of historical context as well. So what I'm going to do for this technique is I'm going to put the chenille on top of the fabric and I'm going to stitch over it. So we're not going to go through, because that's what wears the chenille and makes the little fibres come off the thread. So I'm actually going to just stitch over it, so it's much easier way to do it. Let's do it with this colour, green. I'm going to do this little leaf here, and I'll show you the rest of the flower when I have done that one. So there's a couple of reasons that's good to use this. So one, it doesn't shred because it's not going through the fabric. The other one is you only use half the amount of thread that you would use because it's sitting on the top and we're not wasting it going around the fabric. So you get twice as much out of your thread. So that's good news. So I'm going to use this green one and I'm going to stitch it down with another thread. Now you can do a couple of things at this point. You can either use a normal sewing thread, a sew-all thread, a good strong polyester thread in green. I've just sort of generally matched the colour of my chenille. It changes colour, this chenille. It's really beautiful. So just go for a sort of mid-tone of that. So you can either use a normal sewing thread, which I have used in the stem, or if you don't have that or appropriate colour but you have got embroidery threads, you can find a matching embroidery thread and use that instead. You can just use one strand. So I applied that down, taken one strand out of my 6 strands for that one, and I'm just going to use that one thread. So I'm going to try that here, see what that looks like compared to the sewing thread. I've also just run it through a little bit of beeswax, just makes it a little bit stronger to stitch down with, but you don't need to do that, it's absolutely fine. I'm just going to try it with the beeswax. So I'm going to start at the bottom here and I'm going to stitch over my thread. So I've got a little waist knot on the top there, that gets cut off, that gets wasted as a waist knot, so a knot that comes off later. I'm doing 2 little small stitches. I'm going to cover the whole of this shape. I'm going to fill it in, so I can just put my 2 starting stitches anywhere in that shape, that will get covered. And then I'm going to just come up inside my design line, because then this, we just lie on the top. This all sits on the top. The only bit that goes through to the back is the ends, which I'll show you how to deal with in a second. And I'm going to stitch over it. So I'm not going back down the same hole. I'm going to just leave the sort of width of the chenille and go straight back down. And then you'll see what happens as I do that. Just couching, stitching over the top of it. I'm going to leave a little tail end. And that's all there is to it. It's a very simple stitch. This is how the whole of this has been stitched. So just come up just inside my design line, over the top, down on the line. It's great for covering your lines up. It's a nice thick thread. It spreads out a little bit and hides all sorts of mishaps. If you're struggling to cover lines, this is a great thread to use. And I'm not pulling on it. You can see that I'm not putting any tension on that. I'm just letting it sit on the surface, coming up one side and down the other. If you've done a lot of gold work, or any gold work in fact, this is the method you will have used, I'm sure, and just couching down your gold threads. And because the chenille has got a pile to it, the thread disappears. You can't see that couching thread, disappears into the pile and all you see is the thread. So it's really beautiful. You just get the effect of the chenille thread, and it looks really luscious and really dense and beautiful. The texture of it's lovely. It's not really refined like other silk threads. This is a silk thread, but the textures and the colours just really make this stand out. And I'm just going to go around the shape doing that, couching over it as even as possible, even though you can't see the stitches. Just make sure it's held down. Then I just want to show you how to turn a point, so I'm going to go right to the point of the leaf and get really beautiful shapes. And I'm just not handling that chenille really, just letting it lie on the top, so the less you handle it, the longer it will last. So one more stitch before the point. You want a nice sharp point at the end of the leaf, so I'm going to come up just inside that point there, like so. So my chenille's on the outside, my couching thread's on the inside, and I'm just going to pull the couching thread out and wrap the chenille around it. It makes a really nice sharp point. So you can get some nice details in it, even though it's quite a thick thread. And then I'm just going to carry it on again, back down the other side of the shape. So I'm going to go around there and get to the bottom. I just want to show you how to start another row and then how to finish off those ends. So I'm at the bottom of my leaf. Now this is easiest to do regarding finishing the ends off if you have fewer ends to finish. So I'm going to just go round and round and round with it. So I'm going to turn again, so like we did at the top with the corner, and turn that thread so it's going in the right direction. I'm just going to carry on round and fill the whole shape in. Now you can just do an outline if you want to, if you like that effect, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to go around again because this is what they did. The chenille gets the best effect when it's sort of in big blocks of it and it's got that beautiful texture. And you might notice what I'm doing this time is coming up on the inside of my shape and taking my needle down towards that previous row. That stops me sticking the needle through the chenille. If I try and come up next to it, I'm sticking it through the pile and I can damage it. So I'm coming up away from it, not very far, but just away over the top, and take your needle down next to it, and that just minimises the amount of damage. And then you can just go round and round and just fill in the shape like this. And if you've got it on that reel, like I mentioned, there's another one that I've done, just put round I think that's the innards of a cling film wrap. Just wrap with a bit of tissue, so whatever you can find to wrap it round, but that just means I can keep using that. I haven't got to measure how much thread I need. I can just take it off the reel and use what I need. So I'm just going to get up to the point and then we'll look at finishing those ends off. Now I'd normally just carry it on round, but I want to show you what to do with this. So there's two ways to finish this thread. We're going to take the ends through to the back and we're going to stitch over them. So again, if you've done gold work, you will be familiar with that. So I'm just going to thread it in the needle. I've got quite a long end here. I can do that easily enough. That threaded in my chenille needle, and I can just take it right down at the point and just pull that through to the back. Or if you've only got a little short end like this, there's another method that we can use. And we're going to use a lasso or a lasso if you're in the States. I know it's different, which caused much merriment when I taught there. I went on, oh, I'll use a lasso, and they're like, what's that? So it's one piece of thread. It's quite a strong thread, buttonhole thread, top stitch thread, something a little bit stronger. Folded it in half and put both ends, let me see if I can show you that, through the eye of the needle in the same direction. So it forms a loop like so. We're just going to use the loop to catch the thread down with. So I'm going to take that needle down at the end of my leaf, just so I've got that little loop poking through, and then all I do is put the end of the thread in the loop and I can just wiggle that and that'll pull it through. So that's great if you've only got a short length left or you can't thread it in the needle. That's another way to do it. So we've got them through to the back. Let's see what we do on the back. So I've got my end that I have pulled through. That's a nice long one there, and I've got my thread that I've been stitching it down with. You can use the same thread for this. Bring it through to the back, and we're just going to lie it on the back here, and I'm going to stitch over it. It's best to fill the whole area in first, so you've got some stitches on the back to make it nice and secure, and don't finish it off in the space. Come inside the shape you've been stitching and finish it off in there, just a little bit more secure and a bit neater. So I'm going to do it in that direction, and I'm going to stitch over it. Now I've got a backing fabric behind this fabric because the chenille's not going through to the fabric and going round and round the fabric because I'm stitching with it. I can actually put a backing fabric on, and that comes in really useful at this point because now I'm just going to pick up a little bit of it and those stitches that are already there, and I'm going to stitch around that little tail of chenille and just stitch over it and stitch it down. You don't need to do the whole length, about a centimetre, half an inch, absolutely fine. Just go over it, make sure it's really secure. You're just doing this so it doesn't come undone, so just think, what do I need to stop it coming out again? Round and round, just pick a bit of the fabric up, some of the stitches. Make that end nice and secure. Let's just go a little bit further, a couple more. and you'll get that loop there. I'm going to go through the loop, sort of knot around it, and then I just like to go once more under there. Good luck. And you can cut that thread off. You can cut that length of chenille off. Make sure you do that so it doesn't get all tangled underneath. Move that and you've got that really nice, super neat finish that's not going to come under. So I've just done the same with the other end of the leaf, but I just wanted to show you the back of the whole thing so that you can see what it looks like. So it's mainly all of these couching stitches that we've done, and then all the chenille that you can see is the ends where we've brought the ends through to the back. So it's a little bit flatter on the back. You're not using all that extra chenille silk thread, because it's all sitting on the top, and these are just nice and secure on the end, so nice and neat and nice and flat, and you don't use so much thread. So that's a really good way of putting the chenille down, but have a go at both. Have a go at stitching with it and stitching over it, see which one you like the best. A quick look at the front. It's not finished, obviously, because I've only showed you that little bit, but just wanted to show you these flowers because it's all done exactly the same way, all just couched over the top. I've mixed a couple of threads here, so I've used this beautiful blue and green one for the main petals here, and then I've used this sort of pale blue and white one for these insides here, and then I've just put a little slither of that inside these petals. So you can either fill it all in one shape, you can use two colours inside, you can do a dark edge around it and use a different one. You can select which bit of the thread you want to use because it does change colour, so if you want a dark outline you can have a dark outline. I put a couple of rows of the dark one here and then filled it in with a light one. You could leave them empty if you want to leave them empty and just do some outlines. There's lots of different things you can do with this thread. It's really beautiful, so do have a play and see what you can come up with yourself. So don't forget the free design if you want to have a go at this project. The link for that is in the description below the video. The beautiful silk chenille threads are in our shop now. Go and check out all the lovely colours of that, and then go and have a look at our 18th century embroidery, a beautiful piece. You can see that video up here to learn all about that and how that was made. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you have. I'll see you next time.